Decision Diaries with Lynn and Jami.
Okay, welcome to Decision Diaries. Today on Decision Diaries, we're going to talk about the decision to date after a divorce. So Jami is going to be telling us her personal experience, her takeaways. This is going to be fun and interesting.
I think so. I'm excited to share. And I was just thinking about it. This is the first time you and I are doing a podcast where you can't really weigh in very much because although you have your what would I do if I got divorced, we're always having these like Bruce knows my plan B is blah blah blah. But no,
Gotta have a plan B.
You always have a plan B. Like you're the funniest thing. I didn't even have a plan B, and I'm the one divorced.
Well, I also lived through you, so I want to do that again. I want to relive it again.
Yeah, and there's a lot that you haven't heard, so I'm going to give it to you, and that's why we did not have any conversations prior to this, so that you can be just surprised like the audience.
Okay, go ahead, start. Let's.
You ready?
I've got a notepad to write down questions.
Okay, so I'm going to put it all in a timeline for people because I think that makes sense. And we already discussed that we are going to have the decision to get divorced, and that will be a separate conversation because we're going to keep this one kind of light. Okay, so my ex-husband and I made the decision to separate, and the rule was going to be that we were going to act as if we were divorced. And that anything that we did would be, our own business, but that we would be safe about it. Because I think in the beginning stages, there was are we really going to completely divorce? Are we going to get back together? That was sort of like the knee-jerk reaction to it. And I don't know how other people are when they get a divorce, but I will tell you that the week that we made the decision, I put my profile up on JDate. Now, the reason that I picked JDate is that my ex-husband and I, while we met in high school, went on a date in college, we reconnected years later on JDate, which for anybody who isn't Jewish knows that this is a Jewish, it's like the equivalent of Jewish Match. And this was, anyway, I had success because my ex and I would never have reconnected. We were living in separate cities had we not been on JDate. So I put my profile up and I had a date, probably the day that I put my profile up, because in dating terms, I'm fresh meat, right? I am new to the scene, and I have since learned, and we'll talk about which apps to use in another episode, also teasing that one. But JDate was not the app for me, and dating the week I separated was also not the right decision. So I was very, very into yoga at the time. I think you remember. And I would go in the morning with kids before they would go off to school. And then when we decided to separate, we did what's called nesting. Do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
Nesting is where the kids stay in place and the parents rotate out of the house. And we were very, very lucky that we had a Sita that was a little room behind the house that we actually were able to rent out, and he lived in that. So I needed to find a place to go when he was with the kids. So I posted my thing, and I was going to do a yoga class, and then I was going to do a restorative class for yoga. So I was not ready. And I think that what ends up happening when you're going through a divorce is one of the big fears for people is, I have to date. Like, I have to go out and date. And part of it is like, I was in my 20s, a lot of us were in our 20s when we got married the first time. Now, majority of us have had kids and life experience. And as the term that I learned in Landmark Education is, life has lifed us. And I've had 3 children in this body. And so now I am going to be dating, and I'm going to be dating with a body that is completely different than the body that I dated with in my 20s, right?
Well, but you did, I will say that you went into your Cinderella body. So we all know that when someone's getting separated, getting divorced, they really start looking awesome. I mean, they really do
Of
start
the
looking
divorce
awesome.
diet.
So you are putting your best foot forward. But did you
Okay, but the
ever think,
divorce diet.
let
The,
me ask you a question real quick. Did you ever think, were you thinking you were gonna have the Pina Colada song experience where you were on J Date and your ex-husband was on J Date and then you guys ended up like it was you? Was there any hope of that at this point?
So I will say that when we separated, I wanted him to realize that I was not the root of all evil and go out there and figure out that I wasn't any worse than any of the other women that he was going to pick up. But as I shared in a previous episode, I'm chocolate and he's had chocolate for 17 years and maybe he wants, Neapolitan. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So the excitement definitely had worn off. So I would say that I really didn't think that we would end up divorced. But that doesn't play into this conversation.
Right.
But I wanted to say when we were talking about the divorce diet, and yes, that's what a lot of people who go through the divorce either get really hunky or really chunky. And having said that, though, the boobs, Lynn, the boobs, they don't reset just because you lose weight. Like you still have, like when I got married, I didn't have to wear a bra under my wedding dress. I just had these beautiful perky boobs. And, I nursed 3 kids. So I had to go out there with my Cinderella body and my saggy boobs.
Well, deciding to date after divorce, depending on when you get divorced in your life, it is what it is, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah.
So kudos to
So-
you for being like, yeah, these are it. This is what you
So-
get.
Yeah. Okay. So then I meet this guy and I'm like, I am not ready to date. I just knew I wasn't. You just kind of know, like you just know. And this is one piece of advice that I would give to people, and it's so true. And it's the expression is you attract where you're at. And I always tell this to people because one of my personal hobbies is like dating coaching, and what I ask them is, would you date you? So take all of your baggage and all of the stuff that you've got to go. Maybe somebody is pining for another person, right? Or whatever their baggage is. Would you know, if you could kind of peek behind the layers of this person and it's you, would you date you? And there's an answer. If you would not date you, don't date because you're going to attract where you are. I mean, so I'll keep going with the story.
Well, can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
So, how did you not feel like, I mean, I guess, at that point in time, talk to me about you looking at you behind the curtain at that moment because, as I've mentioned in a previous episode, my husband and I are competitors. And so I would be saying to myself, oh, I'm going to look behind that curtain and it's awesome. And everybody wants a part of this because I'm in a competition with my, ex-husband. I mean, Bruce and I would be brutal about like practically going to the same bars just to see like who could compete. Were you guys not in that state? And what did it look like for you behind your curtain there?
Well, first of all, that would assume that there was any conversation or communication. He wanted nothing to do with me. He even said like he just needed boundaries up when it came to me. So he didn't want to discuss anything with me. So I had no idea I was going to share with you actually what happens is I decide that I am not ready to be dating and I shut everything down and I don't pursue it. I find out through one of my kids that and remember at this point, he is still sleeping in the casita behind the house and I can hear the gate, opening and closing at 11 o'clock or whatever at night. So I know he's been out. So I find out 6 weeks after we've separated that he is going away with a woman who, side note, my company ended up organizing her fiance's garage as a gift. That's pretty funny. But There's my squirrel tangent.
Wow.
But he is now going away 6 weeks after we've separated with a woman.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not dating and he's traveling. And obviously you travel with someone, other things are happening. And so I'm like, well, I need to start dating. So I go back to JDate and I end up meeting somebody who ended up we were 100% match on the app, and we were spending hours on the phone, and I got so excited about him, and all of a sudden I'm ready to be dating. And or I think that's the thing. I think I'm ready to be dating. And he ends up, we go on, I think 5 dates. The first 3 dates were dates. In his mind, after the first 3 dates, we're not dating and he's just going to move me to the friend zone. But I haven't dated in 20 something year, 17 years. I haven't gotten the memo and I'm totally friend zoned. And P.S. he ends up becoming a really close friend of mine. But and then I find out that my ex-husband and this girl end up breaking up. And I learned through her, because now she's become a client, that he was nowhere ready to be dating either, by the way. And that's why a lot of those of us in the space are like, have you gotten divorced yet? Because when you are new on the scene, you are sowing wild oats, you are rebound relationship, and nobody really wants to play in the sandbox with them. I mean, typically. Having said that,
oh yeah, okay, wait a second.
My boyfriend was separated when we started dating because it was during COVID. He was staying married for his ex to stay on his health insurance, and I was a little bit nervous about dating him, but I had a dating coach actually at the time. And I can talk about the decision to hire a dating coach in another episode. But basically she said, you can't loop every single person into the same box. And one of the questions that I did ask my boyfriend on our first date was, he admitted to me that he was seeing a therapist. And I said, what does your therapist think of you dating? And I thought that was a really good question, because and the other question that I asked, which is a very good question for somebody who's deciding whether they're going to date after divorce, is asking the other person what their role was in the downfall of their marriage. And if somebody doesn't take any ownership of it, or wants to put it all on the ex, or only wants to talk badly about the ex, that is a red flag, not a yellow flag. It is a red flag. So, that's another part of the decision to.
So I want to catch you on that point, because you probably do not know this, that in my 20s, I dated a guy who was divorced. And a lot of, yeah. And he received a pie slice. I just want to put it out there. I kind of sometimes wish I could take that one back, but you're right. You need to ask an open question about, what they learned from that experience, because what I later found out when this person was describing the relationship and what was wrong with the relationship and acted like the spouse had done these things, I think that he had actually done those things. Some of the things being like controlling, and some of those things being like moody, because, as we started dating for a little bit, I mean, him being divorced didn't bother me. He was still very young. But as we started dating, I started seeing those behaviors in him. And even though he said those were the things he didn't like about his ex. So I think that is really interesting that you asked that question. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. It's important. And I also think that it is important that somebody not be escaping. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a little bit of escape, but someone who's happy with their life and not looking to have you be the source of their happiness. Trying to determine that is important. And I'll tell you another big one that I learned. So I dated somebody. We actually had separated the same month. We had married the same year. And he didn't want anyone to know we were dating. And that is another red flag. Like, and by the way, his ex was in a significant relationship by the time we started dating. So there wasn't a hope to get back together. But if somebody wants to keep you a secret, run.
Yeah,
Run.
yeah. I mean, I can only imagine, like I said, it would definitely, I'm envisioning what it would be like. I mean, all I can do is try to envision what this was like, or what this would be like, if I were in your shoes. And, for a while there, when I accepted that you and Adam were not going to be together anymore, which was an acceptance that Bruce and I had to go through, losing you guys as a unified couple, but definitely still remaining friends with both of you. At first, I was like super excited.
Wait.
Huh?
You're still friends with him?
Well, we're friends with him on Facebook. Like, we don't travel to him, and when I come to San Diego, we drop in, we say
I'm
hi.
friends with him on Facebook. Do you?
We're I don't know. We don't
Wait,
talk
I
often.
thought I got you in the divorce. Wait, you were friends with me first.
Okay, you're my number one, but all I'm saying is, once we
Wait
got
a
past
minute.
that,
Wait a minute.
I
Who
I was I was very excited for your next journey, and I was also thinking that your next journey, you would not be as uptight as you were in your 20s. And so we had several long distance phone calls, where I believe you started those phone calls with, "This is the best sex I've had ever." and, and so there's some dating, and there's some little mini relationships before you met your Brian, that could be a good side of the post
Oh, yeah.
deciding.
So back to the decision to date. It's, like, if you don't do well with rejection, right? And there are a lot of people who I know who choose not to date because they can't handle it. I mean, because when you date, you risk your heart. And there are a lot of people who are like treading water at this point. I mean, if you're working and you're a single parent, that's a lot in and of itself. And then throw dating into the mix, which is time consuming, and you risk rejection. So there are a lot of people who stay in their comfortable little bubble, or who have this wall that they think they want to date. They think they're emotionally available, and they're not. And in fact, I think I shared with you guys that I was not as emotionally available as I thought I was when I did hire that dating coach, and had to kind of shine a mirror in my face. So, you have to make sure that when you're making the decision to date, if you can handle, the rejection, and if it's going to bring you, and I will tell you truthfully, yes, it was really fun to have sex again. I'm going to be honest with you. It
Oh
was
yeah,
really
yeah.
fun.
You
Again,
were like,
chocolate.
oh,
You only
oh.
have chocolate ice cream, and then you discover there are all these other flavors. And you know what? You know your body more in your 40s than you do in your 20s, right? Don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was I do think that there's kind of like, I have gone through a couple of divorces or separations with a couple of friends, and I do think there's this out of the gate fun time. And then there is the, I want to find the right partner. And when you talk about rejection, I think everyone needs to go back to flipping that on its head and saying, that person just wasn't the right partner, because here you are with Brian, and so you had to go through some rejections. There's no way you're going to come out of the gate and get the first one.
Well, you think maybe you're going to be the anomaly. And I will say, with my boyfriend, he had dated before he met me, but definitely, he went out with 10 women. I went out with 150 men, and speaking of being wild, I have friends that were like, they had married young. They hadn't had a lot of experimentation. They hadn't had a lot of partners, and they were like, I'm going to try everything. And I know people who are with pool boys, and people who are straight that were with women, and, all different colors and shapes, and, just whatever. And I thought, and I think I shared this in another episode, I thought, yeah, because I was so concerned with, only being with a certain amount of people. And I'm like, yeah. And then I have my one night stand, and I'm like, yeah, no, not for me. But I also want to share something that I haven't shared previously, and it's pretty significant. And that is that my first relationship that ended put me into quite a depression. And I have heard before that people will say sometimes that rebound relationship will have more effect on a person than a divorce. Because if you think about it, my marriage wasn't wonderful one day or awful the next and now I'm divorced, unless, you're surprised. And I was not surprised when my marriage ended. I mean, it was a slow decline and it was a lot of thought. And so I had time to wrap my head around, hey, yeah, my marriage isn't going to work out. And, it became not if it was going to happen, but when it was going to happen. So the first breakup, I mean, I probably should have gone on an antidepressant for it because that's actually where my Cinderella body just really evolved. I was, do you remember like going through a breakup when you were like in high school or college and you can't eat?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I dropped down to a point where I couldn't eat, that I was like nervous. Like I mean, none of my clothes fit. It was, back to like when I had cancer and I couldn't eat. And then I had another significant breakup. And I ended up going on antidepressants because I could not handle going through at this point, I'm still separated. I could not handle going through the divorce, running a business, managing 3 kids, and the heartbreak. I mean, and I'm just like, I didn't even go on antidepressants when I was waiting for my cancer diagnosis. Like, it takes a lot out of you. So, I mean, like I said, you have to be in a healthy place on your own before you ever invite a relationship. That is the best piece of advice that I can give anyone. And that, like I said, would you date yourself? If you are a hot mess, that's what you're going to find. And I will tell you that I did date somebody. I don't want to out what the problem was just in case, because he scares me a little bit. But he had some significant problems. And this Jami would be like, oh, you're not even making it past the first date. Like,
Yeah.
I would have seen all of the red, and with him, I just made so many excuses for it and I didn't see it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he actually, up until like even within the year, he would reach out to me on a regular basis. My boyfriend knows all about it. And, and try to come into my life. And I'm just like, I had to block him. I'm like, you're crazy. And like I said, I'm not, he scares me to this day. So I'm not
It's
give any personal
interesting
information.
because I'm in a book club and there are 3 women in the book club that have gotten a divorce since being in our book club. And they came to book club and we were talking about a book, and then we went around the room and we were talking about some book, some relationship book, and one of the women in my book club would announce the book. Oh, this is how I feel. And oh, by the way, hey, everybody, I'm getting a divorce. And everybody would, pause and be like, oh my God. But then the other 2 women in the book club were like, are you ready to go out with us? Are you ready to, like, we're going to, like, the ones that we had different, people at different levels of time in between their divorce. So we had the one that had been divorced for 3 years, and then somebody that had come to book club and announced it that night. And the other ones were embracing them and are like, we're going to help you on this journey. And we're going to form a little mini group within the book club of the divorced ladies within the book club, and all the other married ladies. We're going to come back and we're going to bring all our great stories, both good and bad, stories of, like you mentioned, some psychos, right? And then stories of, some hot guy. And then, a few of them have come back because they have, I believe, found their person, but are not quite ready to go back and get married. They may move in together. They're trying to really kind of keep finances separate. So, that's also kind of something that's different. They don't know if they'll get married again, and not everything has to end in marriage. So here we are in the book
Don't let
club,
my boyfriend hear that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so,
and he's
here we are in the book club, and we read these books, and now everybody is coming from different perspectives, and we've kind of got a little mini group. So I hosted book club. You're going to love this, Jami. I hosted book club at my house, and a certain pilot who you flirted with at my wedding, is still single. And he
Mm.
happened to be in town in Jacksonville. And
Mhm.
so I was like, ladies, single, recently divorced ladies, this is your guy. He comes with no baggage. He's a pilot. He's great. He's smart. And he's probably the person that Jamie should have continued flirting with at my wedding. So, and I did think about you reaching out to him after your divorce. He could have just flown into California and you guys could have had a great time. He is still very much out there. So any ladies, reach out on Decision Diaries and I'll direct you towards his match.
Did he ever marry?
He did not marry, but I will tell you that he had a long-term relationship with a person, and he was with her all through her cancer.
Okay.
And and all of those ailments, and just I would say it was a marriage. I mean, you can't.
Okay.
There
All
was
right.
no paper exchanged, obviously, but
That's fine. That's fine. But so he's committed, because that's always a red flag for me too, is somebody that's never been married, especially,
no.
Now that I'm in my 50s, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he is very much out there and he's on the dating apps and he comes into Jacksonville a few times and he unfortunately was out with my husband, didn't get to meet the girls of the book club, but I sent them all to where he was listed on the dating app. So he is still very much out there. And I will say, as a married person, support your recently divorced friends in their decision to date and mix it up. I think personal introductions are great, and so if you know somebody that's kind of at the same point in a post divorce, then try to get those people together, because all you really want to see happen is good people
Yeah, and I will say this,
finding each other.
I wish more people had that attitude. I really hoped that I would be set up. That was really what I wanted. And it just seems like people don't want to go out on a limb for other people. And I did have 2 relationships that came out of being set up, but the majority of the people that I met were online.
So I think I kind of understand a little bit about the hesitation. I did provide a setup to one of my friends who was divorced, because I went to college with this person, had a great time with them. But of course, I had never dated him, so I didn't know how he dated. But there
You don't
were
have to
a
know
little bit of mind
everything.
games,
Yeah,
right?
you don't have to know that.
Right. So
I mean,
that
really,
was
it's
one
just
of the
the thought
people
that,
that
hey, these are 2 people that, yeah, I think it's kind of like, hey, I'm making this introduction. I'm not going to. The most is that I was always chasing the butterflies, right? Like so I think I told you that I remember I had chosen to go on 50 first dates, that we recorded that episode. And I used to tell really, like, I'd show up, I'd look at him, and I would make the decision whether it was going to go or not go. Right. And I learned that is absolutely not the way to date. And what I discovered is that I wanted those butterflies, which is actually anxiety. Did you know that?
Yeah. Or you haven't had some in a while.
Yeah. That too.
It depends which way you look at it.
Right. Valid. But the butterflies of the, that nervous feeling is actually not the feeling that you want when you're dating and you're looking for a long-term partner. Now, you might want it when you're dating, but when you're looking for a long-term partner, you want a feeling of comfort and feeling like really good in your body. And that was one of the things that happened with my boyfriend, where I started to focus on, am I calm? How am I feeling in my body? You know what I mean? And there were times during our relationship that I definitely had some anxiety, really just about the unsettledness of his situation, and having to be a secret to his daughter, because he didn't want me to get involved until we knew that things were going to be right, and we were going to work out, and some other things, but I felt calm with him.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know you went on 150 dates or so.
More,
And
probably.
right, and I almost wish I would have recorded some of the phone calls when, when you call your married friend and, I'm looking over, I've got my hair in a ponytail. My husband's like eating potato chips with the chips all over his his, his shirt and his belly. I mean, we're just way too comfortable. And you were calling me and you were just I don't know, taking a shower, getting dressed. Which is, something that, at the time that I'm on the cell phone with you, I'm looking over and, my husband and I are way beyond comfortable. He's like, do you want to go to the movies? And I just put my hair up on a ponytail and we head out the door. So to me, there had to have been, you know, just the excitement and newness, of course. And then the other thing is, hey, I think meeting anybody. I love meeting new people. And I think dating for me was all about I say I never had a bad date because I meet somebody and I learn something new that maybe I didn't know. And another person that I dated that was, I just thought about him, that was divorced, and was older than me, is we were sitting there and we were having a conversation. And Jamie, for some reason, I fixated on his nose. And for the life of me, I thought to myself, what is my obsession with this man's nose? I have a very large nose. And at one point in my life, I thought, I wanted to get a nose job or something. So this guy is talking and he's fairly interesting. I'm in my 20s. He's in his like 30s, 35s, and he is divorced as well. I don't know why I got on this kick for a little bit. I guess I thought I was a more mature woman or something. I don't know. But I'm staring at his nose. And then all of a sudden in the conversation, as I'm thinking to myself, stop looking at his nose, he tells me he had a nose job.
Mm.
And, it was so interesting to me that I was like, I don't think I can go out with him again because I had fought all those years of accepting my nose. And I can't be with a partner that doesn't accept my nose. And, my husband accepted the nose and the fact that, our children could have come out with my nose or his nose or whatever. But I'm over here dating this guy and I knew there was something wrong about his face. I just knew it. But,
Wow.
but I still say it was an interesting date. And I
Sure.
still say he's a memorable guy that I honestly, this is the first time I thought about him. And I wonder, looking at it from your perspective now, where was he? Because what's really interesting is because he was dating such a younger person, he never mentioned his spouse. Unlike the other person I dated who seemed to have blamed his spouse for kind of what I want to say is maybe partially his behavior. This one never mentioned a spouse. But
Well,
I
did
will
you ask?
say, no, at 20, oh my God, Jamie, what did I know what to ask, right? At 20, I didn't know what to ask.
So they tell you, like you really shouldn't focus your first date on past relationships, that you could keep it, present tense and, not go back. For me, though, it was always a natural curiosity. Like, I want to know, what problems I'm going to encounter. And, but it is normal not to talk. You shouldn't talk about a past date or a past relationship or a past marriage when you're dating, in general. And, definitely as a divorcing person, you don't want to bring that baggage to a fresh person. I mean, once you're into the relationship, this is funny. Speaking of bringing baggage. So, my boyfriend and I lived together this morning and he has to hop in the shower and, we share a bathroom, and we actually made a rule that this is an interesting thing. My ex-husband and I, we did get to the point where we did the bodily functions in front of each other. And my boyfriend and I have never, in the more than 3 years we've been together, never done a bodily function in front of the other person. So today I'm like, before you get in the shower, I got to poop. And he says, we don't call it that. We just say we need to use the bathroom.
Interesting.
And I'm like, Didn't you read the book? Everyone poops. He goes, everyone poops, but you don't. You go to the bathroom.
Well, I don't think that, I don't know if, I think another thing, let me ask you this. Were you ever worried that the other divorced person that you were going on a date with was talking about their ex because they weren't quite over them? Did you date
Oh,
anybody that was still yearning to be with their ex, or hoping for some reconciliation?
yes. Still pining. Yes. And, in fact, this is an interesting thing. I had a friend who I met in Landmark Education. I've mentioned that before. And I will say this, it may not be what it used to be, but doing some self development work, if you are going through a divorce and really looking at yourself, is important. And that was one of the things that I did. But anyway, she and her ex-husband ended up both doing the work in Landmark Education. And after 7 years apart, they remarried. And then my grandparents actually were divorced for 3 years and remarried. And so in the back of your mind, you know that that's always a possibility, but sometimes it's more clear than others that this person is definitely not over their ex, for sure.
Yeah, because I trained my boys the best that I could when they'd actually listen to me. But when they would come home and they would talk about a girl that they liked, and they would say, "Oh, she talks about the quarterback she dated," and I'm like, "How often?" Like, if it's more than 5 times in a conversation, she just wants a guy to talk about her ex with, because she's still all about the ex. And of
Well,
course, that
no,
ended up
no,
being true.
no, sometimes you're like, it's and I speak from experience. You want someone to know, like, hey, I'm good. Even the quarterback wanted me. So just keep that
Well,
in.
let
It
me
could
tell
be
you
a
how that ended,
self-esteem
Jamie.
thing.
She ended up leaving my son at homecoming and getting back together with the quarterback. So I'd say I
Oh,
was right on target with that one.
you
And
were.
he had to learn that the hard way, that, mom's right. I hear things, I know things, mom is right. So if you are out there and you're dating and you're on a date with somebody and they are, oh my, I don't even know. I can't even imagine, like, how somebody would drop their spouse into a conversation in a positive light while being on a date. But I would definitely look out for that. I would be like, yeah, this has been great. Thank you. And I hope you and your spouse get back together.
Well,
Uh,
remember, there are people who end up divorced, like, that didn't see it coming or didn't want it, and also, and if you've ever gone through a heartbreak, our brains are made to, and I've learned this because we didn't have the internet when we dated the first time, right? That when we go through a heartbreak, our minds, it's like a drug. That relationship is like a drug, and we will continue to conjure up positive memories to give our brains that, like, that dopamine or whatever the hormone is that we get from conjuring up past, the past good. We don't remember the bad. And what they tell you is, and I now know, is that you write down all of the bad things of that person and you focus on that. But it is normal to just dwell on the good stuff because your brain's wanting that hit. And I've actually likened a breakup to like withdrawing from drugs. And it's true. I mean,
yeah.
you're lucky
Yeah.
you haven't gone through it. It's horrible.
Oh, I've been broken up with, I've mentioned before, I've been broken up with a lot. And and like you mentioned when we first started this podcast, I've always kind of had a plan B. And I will tell you that one day, I kind of got dressed in the dark, and I don't know, I picked up a blue and a black shoe as opposed to two black shoes. And I headed off to work. And, of course, I get to work, I step out of my car, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got a blue and a black shoe. So I need to go head back home, which is an anti-pattern, right? I'm heading back home at, 9:30. And on the drive there, I start to get these thoughts in my head like, do I really know my husband? What if I'm coming back to get this black shoe and I walk in and I find he's with somebody like in our house. And in order for me to get over my anxiety, I try to come up with a plan. I go, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to pick up my black shoe.
Throw it at him.
I no, I'm going to pick up my black shoe. I'm going to say, hey, you guys enjoy yourself. I'm going to head straight to the airport. And I'm going to fly to the other slices of pie in my past. That is what's going to happen.
Wow.
But I will tell you, having that plan B just lowers my anxiety. And I think
I get
a
that.
lot of where that plan B comes from, and that attitude that, it is possible when you're in a partnership for that partnership not to work out, and you need to think about that sometimes, is that, among my mom's friends, people from the 1950s, in the 80s, I saw women coming to our house who were getting a divorce and were very shocked. Some of these men that divorced them completely walked away from the family and left the wife with the kids, and almost took some of the finances with them. So I never wanted that. I was always scared about that being me, and I always wanted to make sure I was well connected, always paying attention. And so that moment when I drove home with my blue and black shoe, I thought to myself, what if? What if? What if? And I walked in. Yes, I picked up my black shoe. Nothing was going on. I did not have to get on an airplane, but I am always prepared for that at any point in time, Jamie.
Wow. You need some therapy for that, Lynn. But
Oh, it's great therapy. It's a
yeah.
mind game I play with myself.
Yeah, I get it. I get the bracing for impact, and we'll have to unpack that in another episode. But before we continue to go on, are there any other questions, or you think anything that I didn't cover in my decide? The only other thing is I'll play. You keep saying I throw safety into the mix. I will also say get some support. If you are going to go out and date, have a community. You mentioned your friends. Have a community behind you. I joined a group called Your Last First Date on Facebook. And it's for women over 40. So the likelihood is of people listening to this episode divorcing, dating after divorce, are probably going to fall into that category. And that has been one of the best things that I did, was to join that group with the dating coach, Sandy Weiner. So I'm going to give a plug in for that. I was actually an episode guest before I met my boyfriend. And so have a community that supports you, because dating can be a battlefield, and you need to be, armed. There's a lot of crazy out there.
Yeah. And I will say, from the married side, of supporting your divorced friend who's going out there, even when, you still like their husband. We still like Adam. We realize you guys, are not together. We still like both of you, but we did try to support you. For married people who are supporting divorced people dating, try not to get jelly. Try not to get jealous that they're looking hot. Yeah, well, it happens, Jamie. I have to tell you. I mean, you're looking hot. You look hot. You're dating. You call me. You tell me you're having some good chocolate special different ice creams, and all I wanted was the best. And so I was so fortunate to fly out and get to meet Brian early, or what felt like was early.
You were one, because you came during COVID when we were still sort of locked down, and you were absolutely the first of my old friends, and maybe even one of my first friends that got to meet him and spend time with him. The other thing that I do want to share with people, and keep this in mind too, because the grass is not greener, and what happens in a relationship is that after time, even in a dating situation, you will fall into, doesn't stay exciting. The difference is, so there are people, and I'm not even making this up, who literally will meet like a new person every 4 months because they crave, they crave that newness, and they don't commit to somebody. They jump into something. It's super exciting. And I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you remember, we're like, this is it. Like, this is the one, probably 20 times. And then eventually you settle in after about 2 years. They say that's the time that it takes for you to go from the crazy euphoric love to just the comfortable, settled, and you so you end up in the same place. The difference is, if you're smart, you do a little bit of work on yourself. You figure out, where is it that you failed in the relationship. And I blame my ex-husband for a lot, but I will take ownership. I ignored his love language. He wanted quality time, and I'm raising kids and running a business, and I have ADHD, and I didn't give it to him. So I definitely learned that there were things that I could and should have done better. So when you do date, and the other thing is, you let stupid things go. Like, there's a great expression on my refrigerator: you can be right or you can be happy. And, letting stupid shit go. You'll appreciate, this is a great story to wrap up. Do you remember when I used to host parties with Adam?
Yes.
Do you remember the first Hanukkah that we hosted together? I was pregnant with Will, and I was making latkes, and everybody was coming over. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And we had a fight before the party, and he had gone and planted himself in the bedroom to leave me alone to prepare for the party, 5 months pregnant. Does it ring any bells?
Yes.
Okay. So Brian and I hosted our first party Saturday night, and I had put a table in the backyard, like a little folding table. I had just set it out. I had not put the tablecloth or anything on it. And I just put it out there to get it out of the garage and get it ready. And he comes home and he says, "That looks like Sanford and Sons. Like, what is that table doing in the middle of the yard?" And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't have to stay there. I mean, we can move it around, and I'm going to put a tablecloth on it." And it really escalated. And it was like, and I'm like, how many parties? Because he didn't live in a house with a yard. And I, as you remember, used to host parties all the time. And I said, well, how many parties did you host? How many parties have you hosted? Like, it definitely, we both got into that. And we were not speaking. So we're in different parts of the house doing different things, which he was helping me, which was amazing because I didn't get that from my ex-husband. And then finally, I'm like, we cannot go into a party angry like this. And he just apologized. And it was like, oh my gosh, that is so nice. And it didn't escalate. And we ended up having a great party. And then of course, we placed a wager. He didn't think anybody was going to sit at that table, and it was a total waste. And then the party's going on, and there are people sitting at the table. And I point to the table. I'm like, you see that table? But we can laugh about it. Like, we both just we're grown up enough to know that there are just some things you don't have to fight about. And I would say that is the definite advantage to dating after divorce. And that is, you grow up. You grow up.
Well, I want to say, to also sort of wrap this up, is that nobody is allowed to date my husband until I am dead, because I've done a lot of work on him.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
if you have a party with my husband now, he knows where he's supposed to be. I have trained him after 25 years. So I feel like if I gave up this project now, the other person that would date my husband after me would be like, wow, he's, he's just such a nice guy. No, he wasn't a nice guy. No, he wasn't that way. He is that way now because, we have worked that out.
Because
and
you housebroke him.
He's housebroken. Yeah. He's like, yeah. And so I'm sorry. I'm going to have to pass away in order for someone to date my husband. That's how it's going to have to be. And after I'm gone, yes, you can date him. And I just want to say, you're welcome. Go by my grave, and just put some flowers there. Now that you're dating my husband in, I don't know, hopefully 70s and 80s, like my father with finding his second love, she should say, you're welcome to my mom, because my mom definitely put the project and put the time in.
Yeah. Well, I think that this has been quite an episode, and I'm really looking forward to the one when I share my which dating apps to use and the decision to online date. But this was fun. Not as fun as I thought it was, be a little more like practical advice. But if you are considering dating or making a big decision and you want some advice or want to appear on our podcast, you can find us on our website at decisiondiaries.com.